please give a big hand to Eivind Holle.
Thank you. Let's see if we can get this thing working. So this is a little bit side topic from the rest of the day or the rest of the session, but it's I'll try to run through it really fast, what we are trying to do. So TV2 is trying to become the home turf of Norwegian sports, and it has then acquired a lot of sports rights from 2023 and moving forward. So let's look at the national sports rights we have, and this is the 1050 games, multi-camera game productions. So it's from the top level of football in Norway to handball, ice hockey, volleyball, and floorball. On the side of that, we also have a lot of international sports that we need to cover, but of course we don't need to produce all the games. We get a feed from abroad. So let's dive into the production model we're trying to achieve for centralized production. Traditionally, you drove out with OB trucks for all these 1050 games, and that's a lot of people moving around in Norway. It's costly. So we try to centralize production to, of course, for sustainability. Smaller trucks, centralized production, less travel, etc., etc. And we partnered with two production companies, DMC and Sports and NAP, to achieve this. The centralized production looks something like this. Of course, you need to be at the arena. That's important because the games happens at the arena. All video and audio sources are drawn from the arena back to centralized production centers. In the center, we can then have control rooms and high level of automation, and it's less building every day. It sits there, and we can just use it. And then the signals are brought back to TV2. This affects staffing, of course. In the centralized location, we try to automate everything, so we can find the sound engineer, maybe do some graphics on some of the easier games, and then graphics is fully automated, for instance. Out of the arena, you still need, on the multi-camera side, camera operators. We also look into AI for multi-camera, but it's not there yet. Engineering charge and the floor manager, of course, and some more people has to stay there. By doing this centralized production together with the federation in Norway, we see that we can add VR, AR as a centralized operation. So the centralized operation of that is going to be in Oslo. 8 VAR desks with a referee, assistant referee, and operator. Supervision desk, and of course you need on-field review. As you know, you've seen VAR. It's very exciting. And this is all done by the DMC in Sports. That's one of the two partners we are working together with. This is all the games that are going to be produced by NAP and DMC. So this is in total, if you look down here in the bottom, 1,050 games, approximately yearly, for the next 8 years. And that's today we do around 300 games, and Discovery is doing around 200 games, 240 games of football today. So it's the double of what's produced in Norway today. On top of this, we need to build a highly resilient contribution network, a flexible platform. Everything is IP. We try to build for open standards. We need to support, if you look ahead to 2028, we think we need to support 4K HDR flows. We need a wide support for codecs and formats, because we're probably going to end up in some locations where we can't get the fiber we do today. 5G is going to be instrumental in all of this. And you need orchestration on top of it. So we partnered with Telenor recently. We are still in the last phase, but we can say we're working with Telenor to achieve this with their MediaNet. And they, of course, do 5G. And we have a lot of centralized locations and 64 arenas. So what do we do on the graphics side? For instance, we need to automate the process. We need data feeds from the federations. because we can't sit there and plot everything. So we're working close with the federations to make the resilience of the data coming in so that we actually can use it live on air. On the centralized productions, we want director-operated graphics. On the 5 camera productions, commentators might operate the graphics. On the higher level of sports, dedicated graphics operators. Multiple graphical platforms, both Singular Live and VisRT are going to be part of this. It's going to be AR. We have AR in the studio, that's Moses-driven tracking and Vis graphics. We're going to have AR at the arenas. It's to be decided. Not on all the arenas, not on the 2-camera volleyball games, but on the high level of football games, it's going to be AR on the side. We work with the graphic design and branding to get it to look a complete TV2 branded package for all sports. But of course, the federations then want to have individual brand identities for football and handball. So the bigger the sports, the more they want to have impact on what we do. So this is some examples of what thing can look like. This is very early sketches, animations, we're testing things. This is tests from Singular Life graphics we tested today with the Handball Federation. An important thing with graphics is player images and team logos. We need automation on import and repurposing of player images and team logos. Multiple derivatives adapted to fit graphical needs, but also the needs of what we need for the websites, different apps, everything, and it's complicated. So this was 1,050 games that's going to be multi-camera produced. On top of that, as I said, we are trying to dive into AI production, and we have some goals. This is not necessarily happening this fall. Some of it, we are starting to do some of it this fall. But this is the plan, and this is the part where TV2 has the rights. This is 7,000 games annually for TV2 Sports. It's mid-tier football, level 3, 4, and 5. The funny thing is that level 5 is called League number 4. Level 3 and 4 has their brand names. So indoor sports, handball, hockey, basketball, floorball, and volleyball. On this part, we also need integration to federation for real-time data, also for orchestrating the whole flow of signals. So this can be highly automated. Automation of graphics. And the goal is no human interaction in the production except local commentators. And that we mean no human interaction, it's actually from the camera to the end user. Everything should be automated. And we do today some games we also have the My Game games, and that's about, in the end, if everything is rolled out, maybe 20 to 30,000 games a year. And some of the supply chain for that is also already up and running and doing automated production. So from arena to end user, no human interaction. Almost. But of course, there's a lot of risks with AI, especially on this level. Real-time data dependent on input. You know, you have this guy sitting in the secretary for handball. He has a son that's playing, and he's pushing the buttons. And if he does something wrong, then it shows up in the stream. So this is not a professional dependence. Young technology requires patience on our side, and then we have to explain it to the end user. This is what you get. It's going to be better in 2 years, but please pay us some money so it can be better. We are dependent on local infrastructure on site. It's a lot of, this is probably known in Norway, but the places where they play the games is owned by, not always clear who owns the facilities and who has access to the infrastructure. It could be something owned by the local community, and then the guy who works there, he has office times, and he's responsible for network. And the games are played by nighttime or in the evening and in the weekends. And then, of course, the office is closed. That controls network. Then we can run into some trouble. Yeah, and then manage expectations of customers versus AIs realistically what they can do. So this is human participation for input. That's the weakest link. We see commentator, because we're going to have commentators here, and they then bring their own stuff, and it's not working. So it's a lot of challenges, but we are quite optimistic that we can achieve a lot of this. So the large flow of volumes is fully automated. Designed, scalable, off-prem solutions. It's not running in MCB, it's actually running on AVS, the solution for the end user. And we need multiple destinations for material. That's the last part, and real-time data is key for multiple platforms. And of course, on this part, we're going to work together with also a lot of partners. It's My Game, it's TV2, it's the federations, and it's Amedia. So it's going to be really interesting to see if we can build this home turf for Norwegian sports. So we have some work to do the next 4 years, I say, but it has to be up and running this fall, some of it. So that's what we do in TV2 today. And this, of course, also impacts what's happened in the newsroom for sports. They get like 8,000 games now they want to have in their coverage. So we need to also change the newsroom in the end to both front end and back end to have control of all this material. It's not going to sit in the normal MAM system. We need to build something bigger, better. So there's challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eivind. This is really exciting. And we are really looking forward what this will become to be. Now, we will learn how Adresseavisen in Trondheim got a newsroom and developers to fall in love and make beautiful award-winning content for its users. Our next speaker will take us on a journey from when their developers and designers were integrated as a part of the daily newsroom and how they are working today. Please welcome Christa Johnson. He's head of the editorial development in the Mid-Norway regional morning newspaper Adresseavisen. He has worked his way from web journalist, developer, project manager to chairing the editorial development team of one of the most forward-leaning news outlets in Norway. Also bringing fresh and new ideas to the table when facing shrinking budgets. How we made our data journalists into rock stars is one of the headlines I have got from you. And Christa Johnson, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hi. Nice title, rock stars. Hopefully the takeaway here will be how can you get a team of developers and designers to be a change or a catalyst for change in your newsroom. So if that may be a key takeaway, hopefully. It's not going to be a full history lesson, but Adressa, we started back in 1767. And that also means that we got about 255 years of culture in the walls. So what happens then when you want to make a change in the newsroom and you're trying to get these catalysts into the newsroom and work with them when everyone has been focusing on newspaper producing? Not only newspaper producing, we have a tradition for innovation. And just to be clear, there were more happening between 17 and 1900s, but just to make a picture of since 1996, when the the first digital newspapers came, and up till now we have been innovating mostly around products. And the iPad came, and we thought that was going to save us. And we've also been innovating with new web pages and stuff like that. But and sometimes we also have been a bit premature with our change. I was looking through some old sketches, and when we started with the paywall, we had to teach the users what is this? What is the plus? Some of you probably remember as well. And nobody were willing to pay, but we had to do that change, and the whole industry was in that change. But other times, you're a young guy and you're really going forward, and you need a QR code. This is going to be a large change. The problem was that it was back in 2011, and nobody had a smartphone that was smart enough. You had to download an app, and we were putting QR codes in the newspaper so you can watch a trailer from the movie we were writing about back in 2011. We were too early, but we learned something. Not much, but we learned something. And just to take you back on the innovation track, long story short, we had a media lab in Adresseavisen and mostly Polaris Media. And we had developers, designers, project managers situated in a room and in a team. One of the problems, I would say, was that they all had different bosses. Our project manager would probably be in the editorial line, and the developers would be in the IT section, right? And there's the problem already. And you have different KPIs, which you are measuring on. So we saw that there's no team integrated as a part of the newsroom, and we need to make a change in the newsroom closer up to the journalism mission. Are you following me? Cool. And also to help change the culture and the mindset. You can send people to as many courses you want, but you have to change their mindset if you want to go digital. And fast forward today, we have a team of jumping happy people who are working with digitalization in the newsroom. But it didn't take half a year or 1 year. It's taken a lot of years building up, and you have to build trust as well. So today our team is consisting of a design developer, data journalists, two data storytellers. They use mostly the CMS. But we also situated the young readers page, TRD, just to get more young people into the group, because that is also a catalyst for change. Okay? But this is not how we started out. Today we have a developer. He's now 27. We got him when he was 24. He didn't know nothing about journalism. He has dyslexia. That's the word. Sorry. But he writes code as a god. And we taught him journalism. And we also have a designer he's a bit more than 27, but they're still young, if you're following me. And in our newsroom, these are, we said rock stars, but they're actually our Batman and Robin. They are our superhero. They give us superpower. But sometimes they're also a bit scary, you know? So we had to, how can we make these guys not that scary? How can we get people to come and want to talk to the developer, to the designer? And back then, we were situated far away from Trondheim Centrum, the center, and this is how the newsroom looked. This was the heart of the newsroom, where you could have sports, culture, news, everything was situated around here. Where do you think the team was situated when they got to the newsroom? Any takers? Yeah? That's a good start, right? And this is typical. For those of you who remember when we started with the digital newspapers, that was the same spot where you put the web page guys and girls. So our first challenge was, okay, how can we get the whole newsroom close to the reporters early on in the process, right? Because we had the media lab, and people were sometimes going, I have a story, can we do this and that? But we didn't know anything about the stories until they were more or less done. So we had to come up with a plan. And the only times we ever saw people was when they were getting coffee. And I don't know about you guys, but the coffee machines in the news departments, Do any of you have good coffee? No. Neither do we. So we're thinking, okay, what can be our water cooler effect? How can we get people to talk to us? So I went out to the electric store and I asked them, what's your slowest coffee machine? With good coffee, right? So we put the coffee machine beside us. And we say, okay, if you come here, you get free coffee. And while this machine is spewing out the coffee, we got time to talk to you. Hi, what are you doing? What story are you working on? Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more. Sorry, what did you say? Oh, that's a good story. Can we please help? And then we got our first meeting with one of the departments who were working on a large story. Then we're going to New York for 10 days to make 10 stories. And we say, okay, that sounds like a nice spread in a newspaper, but we can really go large digital. And of course, they were really excited to have us in the room. Check out their expressions. This is our first meeting. That guy, he's a photographer. He loves us today. He did not see why we were in that room. And we said, okay, do this, do that. We want to make it move. It's going to be real cool. Then what are you talking about? We're going to make 10 pages. We're going to have 5 photos for each story, and then we're going to come home. That's it. No. Look, if you go this and that. And then it was like, okay, trust us. And then they went, yeah, right. But they did it. And after 10 days, they came back with our first snowfall. And we did win some awards, but the main win for us was that we were able to show the newsroom what we were able to do. They now had a visual of what we were talking about. And we also got the possibility to learn and train. But it also got a side effect, because now everyone wanted to look like this, but it often came still too late. Hi, I got a good story. Can you just desk it for me? That's no change. That's just people wanting their story to shine, but not collaborating. Sounds familiar? But it also said that they understand that this is going to be important. We were making change. And we had the first part. And from then till now, a lot of people are coming to us with their stories early on. Still not as early as I would like, but early on. And okay, where are we today? I believe people understand why we needed to come into the newsroom. And now we are situated in the heart of the newsroom. Key important. And we also made a lot of award-winning features and stories, but we still haven't made the largest change. This is back maybe about 2018, 19. We're making more or less one-offs, looking really beautiful, good stories, but we're making maybe 3 or 4 each year of the really good stories. So we had to come up with a plan. Okay, how can we not industrialize, but how can we professionalize a bit more? So we got a couple of goals. Of course, this is known for in each newsroom, but the user is the most important one. We don't make the stories for ourselves, not to make it shine and win awards, but to make good journalism. We don't do one-offs. That means that we don't do just one story and turn away. We have to have some takeaways. We have to learn something new in each project. We also have to analyze, use the data, not just, oh, this was a nice story. And we always test that on Gunnar. It says Gunnar, his name is Gunnar. And he's in the newsroom. I hope, and I believe the most newsroom have him. He's not tech savvy, but he's honest. And if he doesn't understand it, he will tell you. And he's the best guy to go through when you're just about to launch a story. And this is our way into the newsroom, but of course there has been a lot of takeaways from the newsroom as well, especially about the newsroom culture. Going close up to deadline, learning that a story will not live forever. If you have a developer or more developers, you know that they often want to know, okay, what is the largest picture of what we're making? Because I want to make it possible so it can live for years If you come with something on the last day, I want to have making room for that in my code early on. You don't have time for that when you're working on news. So we have to always be ready to kill it in a week or two, but still have some learning, some takeaways in each project. And the first time we really saw that we were making change was in a story about, she's called Emma. It was a story about a girl who was going out to bridges around Trondheim and more or less looking like she wanted to kill herself. And the police were going out to stop her, and the ambulance as well, almost every day. And the crime team has been working on that story for about a year, and they were about to launch. And then someone said in the team, and their their department editor said, "Oh my God, this is a digital story. We have to start over." And this is about 2 days before they wanted to launch. So now we're getting into the story. It's still, we wanted to be from the start, but still they pulled the brakes and they stopped. And we worked on this for 3 months more. And we made a really, really good story that made an impact. But the impact internal was that they're now starting to think for themselves and stopping and being willing to use 3 more months to get the best digital story. And that's a big win for us. And then you're seeing a change in the newsroom and in the mindset. Besides making these stories, we also do robots. And you can be really good at ordering robots if you have a development team outside a newsroom. I want this and that, but it's easier if you got them close to the reporters. You can then, again, the coffee machine effect. You get them talking, but I really would like to scrape that page and get an alert on my email each time something changes. Can you do that? Of course I can. Why haven't you asked? And we still strive to make mistakes. I believe that we can be even tougher here. We're a bit too afraid to make mistakes. It has to be perfect, and it has to be too serious sometimes. So I'm hoping that we can get even more playful in the future. And we also have one rule. You're allowed to say no. If we don't believe in the story, we're allowed, this is the rock star part. Because if we don't say no, we will be making some okay story looking nice visually, but it's not the right story to get us forward. And you will get some internal noise from saying no, of course, but it's important for us. And all this in mind, and my time is running out, we also were able to use the full toolbox when Corona hit us. And everyone in the newsroom was collaborating with us like that. It wasn't a 2-month change. And from my end, where will we be in what's next? I can't wait to find out, but I'm pretty sure that it won't be outside the newsroom. It will be in the heart, and we'll be together with the journalists and editors. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christer. And as he just told us, innovation is not only about technology. It could also be finding new ways of working together. And now we will hear a story about in a really large scale. For instance, on how you get 68 of the country's smallest newsroom to collaborate on one issue. The Center of Investigative Journalism, SUJO, by the University of Bergen, has developed collaboration as a tool for journalistic innovation, together with NRK and the national team for local newspapers. Per Christian Magnus, please, is the center manager of SUJO, and he has more than 30 years of experience as a journalist and documentary filmmaker, and is awarded several times for his work. How we made Norway's largest newsroom. Please give a big hand for Per Christian Magnus.
Thank you, and good morning. Is it working? There it is. How we made Norway's largest newsroom. SUJO, or Center for Investigative Journalism here at the UIB, is 3.5 years old now. During these months and years, we have been behind 37 published investigative stories in the country, and most of them from local newspapers in northern Norway, western, eastern, southern Norway. And the whole mission for SUJO is to strengthen investigative journalism in Norway, and with a special responsibility for local, regional, and smaller newsrooms. And even ultra-small or ultra-local newspapers with 1, 2, or maybe 3 journalists. This story went through last spring, and as you see, it was NRK, the national broadcaster, we were cooperating with them, and the association for these smallest newspapers. This was done through pandemic times, which was a curse, of course, but as well a blessing, because we became fully digital all the time. The project is based on common research. We had a defined period of production. We had a defined period of publishing. And I will tell you how we did this, because we started out discussing with people from local newspapers, from the NRK, and so what kind of issues are we going to deal with here? And we found out that the most pressing issue at that time was migration. It was a couple of months before the general election in Norway. This was an important, and it's a vital topic in the country. This is the portal into the big database of all our research into this project. The portal is made by a very great developer in NRK, and as you see, this is a small municipality in Norway. All the figures were broken down to each municipality in the whole of the country. We all took part in the research period, which included all kinds of open source investigations and data from the National Bureau of Statistics. And we did as well quest packs to every municipality in the country. NRK, with their muscles and strength, they were compiling all of it and completing it into this portal. As you will see now, we had a lot of topics which everyone could just click on, like fraflytting, depopulation from each municipality. When people move out of a municipality, where do they move to? And the other way around, when they're coming in there, where did they come from? And what kind of occupation, what kind of age, what age did they have? And we had as well projections up till 2050. How many old people are living in the community, in the municipality in 2050 compared to today, etc., etc. And we had healthcare, which is a very key area. I will show you, we are going to face a big lack of healthcare people in the districts outer on the smaller municipalities and districts of Norway in the next years. And then we realized we could not present the local newspapers a big database and here it is, go ahead, just do it, make stories. So we sat down for a couple of days with a big group and developed IDs for local stories. So we came up with a list of 200 IDs they could pick from, which would make it easier with some of their own investigation to create a story. And as I said, there were 68 newspapers from the northern to the southern part of Norway being part of the cooperation. And that group we separated into 3 groups, and we met them every day from 9 to 9:30 in digital workshops. This is Astrid, this is Christina, and these three groups, we were having each one group, and for 30 minutes every day, we were discussing what kind of stories can you do today? How can you, and we gave them assistance in going down into the database to find the correct numbers, etc., etc. And every week we had what we call an inspirational lunch, invited a good storyteller or a developer or somebody who could tell them about interesting topics, inspiring them to do the work. One of the most popular stories done by several newspapers was what we call the class photo. They picked up a class photo, 20 years old class photo. This is from Hardanger in the fjord of Western country. A school class, I don't know the year, maybe early 2000 or something like that. And then they started checking who's here, who's left here, or how many went away. And in this class, only six of these pupils are still in Hardanger, and that was the starting point to do personal stories on these people. The ones that left, why did you go? Where did you go? And for those who remained, why did you stay and what are you doing here? The stories also created a lot of local debates. This is from northern Norway about how Tromsø is catching a lot of people moving out of the small communities and they move to Tromsø. This is one of the main findings in the material. Like I said, the lack of or the decrease of healthcare people in small communities. That's actually very dramatic for a country. So because the population is growing older, and the needs are growing as well, and the fewer and fewer people to take care of these people. That was the main finding in most parts of the country. Another one was that immigration is saving Norway, is saving the small communities of Norway. Without immigration, it will be vast, many areas will be vast areas today, or at least in the next 10 years. The newspaper Hallingdølen in a mountain valley between Oslo and Bergen, because most journalists didn't know this, didn't know that immigration was so vital to their own local community. They found this in a database. And in Hallingdølen, they found out that the big group in their area was Polish people. Not only immigrant workers coming in and going back, but a lot of them move there and stay there with their families. And when they discovered that, they did a Polish version of one of their stories. And that story was the most read story in Polish. And of course, with the help of NRK taking all these local stories around the country, bringing it up to a national level and a national debate. This is the big, debate show on NRK. A lot of these local stories came up there, which was, of course, very, very nice for the local newspapers to be on the big shows, national shows tonight. Yeah, here you see the spread of these newspapers. So all the way up to the border of Russia, to the most further south party, newspapers were contributing and being part of it. And we produced stories with these daily workshops for about 6 weeks. Working on stories, preparing them, and then we had a publishing period, which was about 8 weeks' time. At this time last year, we ended in mid-June, and at that time, these 68 papers had produced and published more than 700 stories. And what we see, some of the newspapers were competitors. There were two or even three somewhere newspapers cooperating, which had the same area to cover. What we saw, what I found very interesting is what the main topic is, that cooperation is as well a journalistic method. and you may call it innovation, because this haven't never been done before in the country. I don't know if it's been done anywhere else either. But it's when you have a defined project, then you have a defined framing of it, arrangements for publishing periods, etc., etc. This is a very powerful tool. Cooperation is a powerful tool. And we did a thorough quest back to all participants afterwards. And more than 90% said, we want more of this. And in the end, a couple of weeks ago, we won, together with NRK and LLA, the big Innovation Award, which was very nice, for this project in 2021. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Per Christian. Traffic accidents, storms, or a pandemic. A few years back, these would have resulted in bombardment of news articles, too many for the average reader to process. Live studios have solved this for many sites, but they can do so much, much more. Learn how Bergens Tidende has developed their live studios to meet the need of the readers. Leigh Ochenhaug is head of the breaking news desk in Bergens Tidende. She will tell us how fragmented news stories became curated news feeds with extra value. She has nearly 20 years of news experience and has worked as a crime reporter, general news reporter, and front editor. But first, congratulations to you and Bergens Tidende team for 2 gold medals and 1 silver for the local business robot at International News Media Association Global Media Award yesterday evening.
Thank you.
Good. And also your team Nye Digitale Formater won a silver medal in the category Best Innovation in Newsroom Transformation. I couldn't imagine a better introduction to your presentation. No pressure.
No pressure.
Leigh Ochenhaug.
All right, so I probably should have been, yeah. Thanks. If I'd known we had won these awards yesterday, maybe I would have talked about some of those projects, but I'm not going to. I'm going to talk about live news feeds. Do everybody know what that is? You know, the news feeds that many newsrooms have embraced the last few years. Short breaking news stories collected in a feed. Maybe not that innovative in 2022, but what I want to tell you about is how we use that format to in new ways to meet the needs of our users. Excuse the Wayback Machine quality here. These screenshots are from my very first shift as a front editor in BT in 2013. We had photos, they just didn't appear in the Wayback Machine, many photos. That night, a woman started a series of fires in the city center. Quite a busy night for a first-timer. And in these random screenshots, I counted 9 different articles on our front page about this one single news event. Of course, we want to update our readers with the latest news when something big like this happens. But is this the best way to do it? Will they click 9 different articles with fragmented pieces of news on that big event? Probably not. Fast forward to this spring, a large wildfire broke out right outside Bergen. And now, when something like this happens, we routinely create a dedicated live feed and gather breaking news there as they unfold. We might still have many teasers on our front page, 2 different posts in this live feed, but you don't have to click them all to be updated on all the latest news. A bit about how we work. with our live studios. We can roughly divide them into 3 categories. On the left here, an example, we have a handful of permanent studios that are one for general news, one for traffic news, political news, as you can see here. We have sports, climate and environment is one, and business news. And some of them are not updated very often, maybe just once a week. Others, we have hundreds of posts daily. And then in the middle here, you see an example of our sort of semi-permanent feeds that are dedicated to one topic or one big story, but become or they run over a very long period of time. Good example is our Corona studio, and then this is the one on the war in Ukraine. And then lastly, we have dedicated studios that are for one single news incident that are more limited in time, like the one with the fire that I just mentioned. And in common for these is one large advantage, which is speed. We get the news out to our users fast. And of course, for them, this is a one-stop shop. So how do we take this further? Our most popular product in the last few years has been our Corona live studio. It had many features, but one of the most appreciated was the Q&A section, which I know many news outlets had, but we had the advantage of being able to answer local questions for our users, because there were many local aspects to the pandemic as well. I don't have an exact count of how many questions we answered, but I'm not exaggerating if I say that we're in the thousands. And this contact with our users also gave us valuable information about what they needed us to look further into. If we had like 20 questions about quarantine rules in a day, you would be sure that there are hundreds or thousands of people out there wondering the same, and so on. And all of these things that our readers needed to know more about, how did we give it to them? Well, of course, in regular articles or in like listicles with questions and answers based on the questions that we saw many of in our newsfeed. But we also used integrations in our live studio. Through the whole pandemic, numbers was important for people. Infection rates, how many people are hospitalized right now, how many deaths in the local nursing homes, and eventually vaccination rates. We saw people were counting like shot by shot. These numbers were, of course, a natural part of our Corona News Studio, in addition to a dashboard that was more detailed. And we saw in the most intense periods that when we were coming up to the point of time during the day when these numbers were to be released, our visiting numbers grew minute by minute. People were flocking to us to see, okay, how many people are infected in Bergen today. So this was an important service to our readers. We also did things like an ever-changing overview of rules and recommendations. That was quite a big job to keep updated in periods, because the rules seem to change day by day almost. And we had a quarantine guide where you could enter your specific situation and get a reply that said which rules apply to you this week, at least. When we started working with live studios, I think 2015 was the first one. It was a given that we needed to make a traffic studio. Our users, since we are a regional media house, they depend on us for updated and reliable information about local traffic. Things that affect their way to work, or the drive home from their mountain cabin, or their trip home for Christmas. We have done actually several years dedicated live studios to called Home for Christmas, where we have like a more cozy tone in the traffic announcements. But our regular traffic studio is the most or the best-selling product that we have when it comes to recruiting new subscribers, and we think that is because we give them something that they really need. And in it we have a manual newsfeed curated by a journalist who follows the situation in traffic in Bergen and areas around from minute to minute during the whole day. But we also have several automated services. Some are mentioned here. We have traffic announcements from the road authorities. We have had air quality data in Bergen in the winter. We get what we call inversion, or a lid of poison, as it has been called popularly. And we have had things like the Google traffic map. This list goes on, and it will keep growing. We are always working to develop this further. So I want to ask you a question. If we were to create a new live news studio today, what should the topic be? Any suggestions? Nobody. Okay, I know one person on the first row has the answer here, but what? Very good. Yeah, that would be maybe a feature in a climate studio. Yeah, but airport chaos. Prize goes to you. This is what we have done actually this week. We ask ourselves all the time, what are people in Bergen talking about? What do our users need from us? And right now, we think that is much the same as in the rest of Europe. How are we going to get to our preferred holiday destination when nobody can get a passport? The airports are congested, chaotic. Airlines are canceling flights. Railway workers in Britain are going on strike, and so on and so on. So right now it looks like this will be one of the largest news stories of this summer. And we want to provide our users with the information that they need from a regional point of view, but also looking out into Europe through the summer. So we will have a news feed, and we will also have features like arrival and departure data from airports, and other data that we find useful. This is a work in progress, so I can take suggestions if you have any. And of course, we will have user input. We want our users to let us know where they are when they or if they are in trouble on their travel this summer. Let us know, and we will report it in our feed. And we also want them to be able to ask us questions. If there is something that we can help them answer, find out, we will give them that service. Do you think this will be a success this summer? Yeah, you want to use this? Yeah, good. I hope so. So that was it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leigh. I'm looking more and more forward to the panel debate. We will hear more from this. And now the BBC is currently migrating to a new modular content authoring system and serving infrastructure that together will enable fully personalized experience to be created and delivered to audience at scale. This talk will provide an overview of that infrastructure and discuss how it enables practical, audience-focused innovation in storage, formats, curations, and workflow. David Caswell, please. Good to see you. Welcome. David is the Executive Product Manager for New Initiatives at BBC News. He has previously led product management at BBC News Labs, data and machine learning at Tribune Publishing, and was the Director of Product Management of Content Understanding at Yahoo. He also publishes extensively on applied research of structured and automated forms of journalism, including as a fellow at the Reynolds Journalism Institute at the Missouri School of Journalism. Some of you may remember David from a journalism AI project in collaboration with media partners from Media City Bergen last year. Please welcome, big hand to David Caswell.
Thank you. Good morning. Let's see if I can get this working. There we go. So I'm going to start with the pre-digital media world. So the BBC is 100 years old this year, and our full legacy is in this kind of environment where we basically had control over the channels, and the channels reached essentially everybody with a one-size-fits-all or common product. And so we could talk about the audience as a sort of a single body, or largely as a single body. And when we moved into digital publishing with text in the 90s, the late 1990s, most of those processes came over from the print world, and that sort of one-size-fits-all view of the audience came into our digital operations as well. And that manifested itself, for example, in our digital tools of that era. We built one of the very first content management systems and serving stacks that was purposely built for digital journalism, and that was in the late 90s, and that had this kind of a view. But that view of the audience isn't really applicable anymore. There really isn't an audience these days, especially for a public service organization like the BBC that has a responsibility to be universally accessible and provide value universally across the entire population of the UK. Instead, we have audiences. We have many different audiences, and all of these audiences have almost an infinite number of options for how to spend their time digitally. They have different consumption behaviors, they have different interests, they have different sort of expectations of news media. And so this sort of sets up our sort of large audience challenge for essentially the next 100 years of our existence. And so we can kind of describe that with two sort of basic statements. One is, how do we serve everybody? In other words, how do we honor our universality requirement using roughly one app and one website? It's not, we have a little more than that going on, but we have these digital channels that we have to serve everybody with. And then how do we continue to do that in this unpredictable world that's coming? You know, we all kind of know we're on the cusp of this application of tools like AI and other innovations, you know, the metaverse, the Web 3.0 world. We don't really know what that future ecosystem is going to be like. So how do we continue to serve everybody in that uncertain coming environment? So this is basically our challenge. Like, this is what we're trying to build, this next generation of authoring and publishing and serving infrastructure for. So our existing product is not appropriate for that environment, and it's not really appropriate for serving everybody. It's essentially this kind of wall of text. Text is very prominent. Sometimes we make the text a little less monotonous by putting an image on it, or kind of if you've gone through too many pages of text, we'll put an image in there, maybe a little video. But by and large, this is a wall of text, and that excludes most audiences, and this is fairly common in news organizations publishing. You can look at the scroll depth that you see audiences kind of reaching in articles, and in very large and increasing proportions of audiences just don't get to the bottom of articles. So this format, while still important and it's always going to be around, is increasingly less useful for audiences and will likely be even more or less useful in the future. So this is where we're starting from, and that's not going to last. So what we need is a much richer, more varied set of ways to communicate journalism that we can adapt to different audiences in different situations, in different contexts, and that adaptability will enable us to respond to the future, because we don't know what kind of formats or kind of forms of journalism or techniques are going to develop in the next 5, 10, 20 years. So we need that adaptability. So how can we do that? How can we move from that wall of text to this sort of very adaptable format? Well, personalization is going to be key to this. Adaptability to different audiences implies personalization at some level. And this environment that we're building out looks at personalization in terms of 3 kind of broad categories of personalization. The one that most people think of when they think of personalization is recommendations, recommender systems, what we call onward journeys or onward journey paths in the UK. What we want to be able to do in this new environment, we're already doing this at a small scale, about 5% of our web pages kind of do this, is not just personalize recommendations, but personalize the models with which we deliver recommendations. So it's like one level of abstraction above recommendations. So the first generation of recommendations is you would have a set of onward journey paths, and that set of links would be personalized to the individual. But what this does is it takes it up one level, and not only are the links personalized to the individual, but the model that generates the links is personalized to the individual, or the context as well. So, for example, some audiences, young people, for example, respond and value popular content. They want to know what's popular. In the same slot in an article, some other people, for example, people in rural areas or small towns, particularly value local content. So they might get news near them. Some people have a relationship with the BBC where they set up topics. In our app, for example, you can choose topics that you want to follow. We have a follow infrastructure for topics. And if you've chosen topics, if you've told us specifically that you're interested in topics, you might want recommendations on your topics. This is a minority of audiences that set this up, but it's an important minority. The voice of the editorial voice of the BBC is very important, especially to the very frequent users and what we call our legacy audience, or sort of our most loyal audiences. They very much value that editorial voice, and so editorially selected onward journeys might be appropriate for them. And then recommendations from for example, algorithmic recommender systems might be appropriate for other audiences. So this is just 5, but we can anticipate there being many, many, many more of these. There's a very successful Chinese news app called Toutiao. It's an aggregator, so it's not quite the same. They have 280 different models that they swap in and out for different audiences in different contexts, and that enables them to go beyond just the success that they would get from a single model that's optimized for all audiences. So that's one form of personalization, this different recommendation models for different audiences. A second form of personalization is formats. And so formats are essentially different ways to present or communicate the same story. So you have one story, but you want to communicate it in different ways that correspond with the different consumption patterns of different audiences. So text is not going away. I mean, text is going to be around forever. So that's a format, though, right? It's our predominant format at the moment, but it is a format. Another format is summaries, where you tell the full story, but in a very succinct bullet point way. Another format might be via images, an image gallery, kind of like Instagram stories, where people who are visually oriented and consume information visually might prefer to use images, video, audio, and on and on and on. We've got a list of about 20 or 22 different formats that we want to test and experiment with. There will probably be many more. The metaverse might have new formats. These are all just different ways of telling a singular story. So in a way, it kind of separates the journalism from the way that journalism is communicated. And we don't know what the formats will be in the future, but whatever they are, the infrastructure that we're building can handle them. The third kind of personalization is customization. So this is different than format. So in a format, it's the same story, it's just communicated in different ways. Customization is where the story is different itself. It has different elements, different semantic information for different audiences. And so one example of that is customized text. So we've done a lot of work with using natural language generation, for example. Others have, this is quite common, I think, in large newsrooms now. And that customized text, automated journalism is the word some people use, that customized text can be served to different audience segments with different interests. For example, local audiences. Images, graphical elements. We have an internal system called IDT, which is sort of the broad use tool for data-centric graphical elements in our stories. So things like maps, charts, graphs, what we call data pics, these kind of elements. And these can be customized so that they are different for different audiences. We've done prototypes and published trials with that technique. Local information that's specific to some event that's happening locally. For example, we just had local elections in the UK, and those elections are held by local authority area. There's about 400 or so of these across the UK. So having your voter information or your candidate information for your local election customized to you, somebody who lives in a different local authority would get different candidates, obviously. That's customization. In the UK, we have 4 nations. We have Scotland, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, having certain elements of stories that are customized to the nation. It's a coarser form of localization, but it is still there. And then even customization by context, where some audiences, for example, older audiences, you can maybe assume that they know the long context of long-running stories, whereas younger audiences might not know that context, and so you might give them a little more context for a story. And on and on and on. Many, many different kinds of customization. We don't know what kind of customization is coming in the future, but we should be able to accommodate it with this. So those are the 3 kinds of personalization. Recommendations or model, what's called a model of models approach to recommendations. Formats, so who knows what formats are coming. We hope to be able to accommodate them. And then customization. So the tools for doing this, the starting point is our authoring environment. We don't like to call it a content management system for some reason, so we'll call it an authoring environment. And it's built from the ground up for this kind of environment. So it's the big difference here with, keep an eye on the time here. Oh, my screen has gone away. The big difference here is this is modular. So it's not based on a form, like filling out a form, like older content management systems. It's built on assembling an experience from all of these little components. These are some simple components. These 6 here are some very kind of simple elements. But this list goes on and on and on and on. There's lots of different ways where you can bring these blocks in and assemble them. And then these blocks are used to build experiences for different devices, for different audiences, for different situations. And this is all done, it's a web-based environment, which our previous content management system isn't. And it's very, very simple to use. It's almost like using something like Trello or kind of one of these sort of common tools where you don't need to read a manual, you don't really need to do a training course. You can just sort of open it up, read some help, figure it out for yourself. And what this lets us do is these blocks let us innovate very rapidly. In other words, we can build something as maybe a prototype based on some audience research. We can test it using multivariate testing, and then if it works, if it's successful, for example, with one audience segment for a purpose, then we can quickly move it to production. That's the chain of innovation to production that's enabled by Optimo. So Optimo is our authoring environment for the future, and if it lasts as long as the previous authoring environment, that will be used into the 2040s, the early 2040s. And then on the serving side of this, we have an open development environment. We call it Webcore. That's kind of like an onion. It's got this sort of heart at the bottom where only the hardcore, optimizing back-end developers would ever touch. Things that just have to work consistently reliable for the kind of scale that we operate at. And we have these very spiky traffic patterns where we have to be able to sort of, deliver reliably, but then, every now and again we'll have like 20x the traffic volume for 15 minutes and then it goes away. So we have to be able to handle all that. And then as you get further out on the onion, you've got things that are more and more central until you get to the outer edge, which are things that are very specialized for very particular use cases. Elections are out there, games, or recipes. These kind of things that are used in particular cases or particular times for particular reasons. And that infrastructure, which has personalization kind of built into it, that is the infrastructure that we will use to serve all this stuff. This is open, so we have about 236 internal contributors to this at the moment and growing rapidly, so everybody can contribute, and there's lots of, there's a big community around kind of developing this. And so this Optimo plus Webcore experience, delivering personalization in those three categories of recommendations, formats, and customization. What we expect to be able to do with that, we're publishing about 6%, about 5 or 6% of our content with this right now. Our target is to get to 80% by the end of the year, which is quite ambitious. But if we can do this, if we can experiment and develop a rich set of formats and onward journey paths and customization, then we expect to increase our reach with some of these audience segments we're not reaching, and we expect people to increase the frequency of the relationship with all of these audience segments, and especially the underserved audiences, the ones that we're basically not serving at the moment. Usually people outside of the big metro areas with less education and so on. And so if we can do that, then we can provide experiences and content and formats and recommendations and customization that is appropriate to each of the audience segments. And that's my presentation. I think I'm out of time. Thank you.
The rest of the speakers to the stage. And yes, thank you, David. From what we have heard this morning, we have heard the story of extensive amount of content available for local sports events and news. We have heard about data journalism. We have heard about live services for local citizens. We have heard of culture change inside the newsroom, even if the old culture has been there for 250 years. And we also have heard about collaboration at scale, locally, national, and international. Even when we this week have identified the biggest challenge for journalism, when hearing you, I'm thinking, what is it to worry about? Are we already at the right track?
Want me to
David,
start?
yes.
Well, my view is the biggest thing to worry about is stabilizing a form of journalism that is sustainable in the digital era. I don't think largely journalism as a profession globally has done that yet. I mean, we've got things that work and things that are successful here and there, and there's a few business models that work. The New York Times and the Guardian and the Washington Post, for example, the success that they've had is kind of one model that works. But for journalism largely, especially local journalism, I think we are still searching for a digitally native way of doing journalism. And I think that is the meta challenge from which all other challenges kind of derive. So.
For our sake, it's reaching the young adults. How do we reach them with our journalism? How do we tell the stories in the right way? It's more or less what you're saying, I think. But it's, I don't think we're going to have one way to make a story, but we have to find the right way to make the story for each person. And how to get the attention for that age group who are not seeing the newspaper in the living room or not coming to our webpage each morning. And that's a large question to answer. So we could use the rest of the day, or
yeah, you could. And I'd like to hear the reflections from both of you also.
I think the competition for people's time is like an all-consuming challenge for news media as a whole. We don't only compete with each other; we compete with Netflix or Facebook or the metaverse or everything. For us more specifically, that means a challenge to keep our subscribers. Churn rates are still too high for many media houses, and we work on this constantly. We have specialized people working on it, but I think also the newsroom needs to be even more conscious about this. In the end, it's the content that our subscribers are here for, so we need to give them something that makes them want to stay and makes them want to spend time on us in addition to Netflix, for instance. Yeah.
I think events like this is putting us on the right track. I just want to tell that we have a very great colleague here from London, from the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, and they were our main inspiration for our project. We went to visit them in the fall of 2017, and Megan Lucero, who's heading the local news initiative at Bureau, came here to Bergen, have a seminar, and that was the starting point of our project. And I think what we do here now is, so thank you very much, and say hello to Megan. And what we're doing here is part of that being on the track that we interact internationally, because what's happened in London, what's happened in America, what's happened in parts of Europe and other parts of the world is vital information and inspiration for us to do some right choices.
Very good. Then you have almost asked my second question, but I can take it because, David, you are coming from the largest newsroom and broadcaster in the world, and Christian Leigh, you are representing the Norwegian regional media houses. Per Christian, from your project, you're also representing some, as you told, some of the smallest newsroom in the country. When talking about these challenges, we have something in common, even if it's international or big or small. So what is in common and what is really different?
I think one of the things that's in common is the need for innovation, the essential need for innovation. And I should say in the UK, a lot of that is not coming from London, it's coming from places like Cardiff, where you have more of a connection with the people who are getting the least value from forms of journalism that we sort of tend to focus on. So I think the London audiences are actually fairly well served. It's everybody else that maybe is not doing well, and having innovation, especially from those communities that are where the adaptation to this new digital world is the most challenging. I think that innovation is common to basically all forms of journalism. It's really, without that, then the tendency, I think, is to sort of be content with this environment where there's a set of elite institutions serving a small privileged set of consumers, and that's it, and everything else is kind of everybody else is falling back on Facebook or other sort of less quality sources of journalism. I think that's pretty common.
Exactly. You want to add something, Chris?
From an editorial point of view, it's a journalistic commission, of course, and also we're dependent on the trust of our users. Fake news and that part. But there's also something about the Nordic countries. We have most of our users are coming to our web pages, but when we look to the UK or other parts of the country, they are more, I believe, more dependent on Google traffic, Facebook traffic, but we might be going in that direction as well. We don't know, but right now we have a large possibility to interact with the users because they are coming to us. And if I want, if we're looking at anything different, well, I gotta look at my cheat sheet then. It's probably the resources as well. What resources we have to fight, for instance, fake news, and we need to collaborate. So that's my take on that.
Exactly. Some of these from you?
I think they have summed up what we have in common very well here, but I want to add to what Christa says about resources. As a regional media house, we sort of have ambitions like the BBC, but we do not have the resources of the BBC. So that is sort of a kind of a jam that we are in often. That we want to do more than we have the muscles for. Yeah.
But then I see it's interesting to see that even if BBC is a worldwide leading player on driving innovation in a wide range of domains within the broadcaster operation and business, BBC is also very demanded on sharing knowledge and insights and solutions like you have done here, also within the European Broadcasting Union. Having this supporting role of pushing media innovation, why is that so important for BBC?
So there's a kind of a small reason and some big reasons. So the small reason is that we're actually legally required to do that. In our charter, we have an article in our charter, Article 15, that requires us to basically share everything we do. But that, people who are involved in collaboration, most of them don't even know about that. That's not the main motivation. The main motivation, I think, is that the BBC is bigger than most news organizations, but in terms of the platforms and sort of the wider media environment that are our competitors, we're actually not that big. We're in terms of our size and traffic, we're much smaller than most of the big American platforms and so on. And so we share, although at a different scale, the need for collaboration, to sort of maximize the range of opportunities we have and kind of share, prototyping and development and so on. The EBU, for example, has been really influential in a couple of things that we've done. One of them is the opportunities available from automated forms of translation with their European perspective or their news pilot prototype, which is in production, I think, with about 10 EBU members right now. And another one is the work that that's been done on recommenders there, and the way with Peach and some of the things that they worked on, the way recommenders can be done for public service as opposed to commercial organizations. So there's lots to learn, even at the BBC, because we're not, we are big, but we're nowhere near big enough to meet the challenges that we need to address. So.
Exactly, and for you as regional newspapers and also from academia, what is your strive to look outside, to look at what is going on, not only in Media City Bergen and in this cluster, but wider in the industry for the media houses? Are you reaching out? Are you getting inspiration? Are you seeking? Okay, we have had COVID and everything on Teams, but even it's something to learn.
I think there is always much to learn from meeting people from other outside of Scandinavia, maybe because we are sort of similar in Scandinavia, but we also learn, of course, from others in Norway, Sweden as well. But to finally be able to travel again will be good. I would like to invite some people to hear more about your personalization efforts, for instance.
Exactly.
Just to meet people and be able to have these kind of discussions is extremely important, I think. Yeah,
I second that, and I believe Jens Christian said it. We need to cooperate where we can and compete where we have to, and that's a good rule to work with. But just being here, being able to maybe grab a cup of coffee afterwards and exchange ideas, that's one way of moving forward. And of course, we're always seeking what's the next big thing, but it might be a lot of next small things as well. And we have to be on the lookout for it. And we have to go outside the Nordic countries. I really believe in that.
But I have a comment on that. I think I've got quite a bit of time in the U.S. Media market as well as now at the BBC, and sort of looking at the global scene. I think the Nordic countries collectively and the organizations in both media and academia and technology across the Nordic countries are collectively leading on media innovation by quite a way. And so I think while individual organizations may feel that small and under-resourced, the collaboration that's happening here and the creativity that's happening here and the connection between that creativity and practice that's happening here, I think is inspiring quite a few people. It's certainly inspiring us. That's a very meaningful contribution to journalism globally, I think.
And what is also a bit special about Media City Bergen is also the inclusion of the academia, of the universities, of media futures, which could also help to see some more time ahead, but even make it relevant to what is here today. What do you think about your role to help us and to help yourself into the investigative journalism and this innovation?
I myself was a craftsman. I'm not an academic, but I'm surrounded by academics, so a lot of people to play with and discuss with. To me, the secret of the recipe of innovation in our business has to do with the role of the journalist, in my mind. As a journalist, we are supposed to be we are supposed to be on the street, talking to people, meeting people, looking closely at the reality. And I worked in TV2 in the early days and was watching the innovative offsprings, media technology offsprings of TV2, like VSRT, Mozart, etc. And to me, it looked like the secret was journalist-driven. Those who did the best developers there were journalists, or at least journalist minds, or working very closely, as you shown in Adressa, very, very closely. So it was not like a development department at the 10th floor creating tools for the guys at the first floor. It was intermingled. To me, that's the recipe. And I see, not my own, because I'm not in that area at all, but I see the closeness that we have located here in MCB, within academia and within the technology environment here, and the closeness you have to the small local newspapers far up north in Norway, is hopefully we could be a transponder of innovation, just being located as we are.
But Leigh and Christa, both Adresseavisen and Bergens Tidende is part of a larger group, Polaris Media and Schibsted Group. How important is the group for your innovation activities?
It is our muscles. When we want to innovate something, and oftentimes we can build ourselves up to a point, and then we have a shared product and tech teams in Schibsted who have more resources, more developers, and more technology that we can use to do our innovation. But also means that we have to wait in line sometimes to get them to do our bidding. Yeah.
Christa?
To put it in 3 words, speed, power, and the possibilities of, well, it's more than 3 words, collaboration. We've just moved on to one platform for the whole of Polaris Media. And this, hopefully it will give us muscles. But it also means that one part of the department can work with the CMS and how the platform, and we can, another part of the department can work with how to tell stories or what's the next Corona robot, who knows. But it also means that if we make a story, Rune and a newspaper up north can also copy-paste most of the codes but still make it to their own journalism. And this is what we're seeing with large newsrooms. And the risk is probably that we'll be too alike. So we also need to have the room to run forward and be a speedboat, to use a cliche.
But even you the groups are also participating in this cluster. So and it's part of exchange knowledge and insights and so. And you have done much in your newsroom culturally and organizational wise to accomplish the new demand for data-driven journalism, just like your live news system. But there are maybe also more complicated workflows behind. We have part that collecting the information at big scale, assessment and verification of this information, and then coming to the storytelling production phase, and then publishing and monetization, which we have heard a lot of. But in which part of this newsroom workflow is the transformation most needed? Hard question, because
That was hard one.
Where to start? Would you like to go first?
No.
One of the, it's a large question. No, but if we break it down, one of the largest transformations which we've seen during our digitalization is how we work on the journalism. Because when we went to journalism school, you were told that you have to go out, you have to find the broad picture, and then you go in, and then you write your story, and then you make your slug. But now I often see that because of using our analyzing tools and being closer to the users, we start earlier on in the process asking the question, what is our story and how are we going to get people to read our story so that we fulfill our journalistic mission? And that's a change also in the workflow, because we're starting earlier on talking about what kind of story is this, not just going out and filling a newspaper or filling a web page. And that's the change. And of course, everything with the systems, but my main point being that you can send everybody to a digital course, but like I said earlier, you have to change your mindset. And that's what we're seeing now, and that's part of the workflow.
Yeah, and also in changing the mindset, also we are working a lot on focusing on user needs. When we toss out ideas, we talk about, okay, what is it that we want to solve for our users doing this? So, and that is through the whole chain, I think. Yeah.
Exactly. It's flashing red for me now, so I'm afraid we could talk, as you say, the rest of the day about this, but we have to close. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and knowledge. The field of innovation domains within the newsroom maybe could be ascribed to 3 areas: helping journalists at their job, empowering the public, giving it access to relevant content and allowing it to contribute to the news process, and helping news outlets produce, edit and promote content, as well as generating revenue. Media business models increasingly have moved to digital subscription. Newsroom need to deliver journalism in formats that differentiates, build habits, and appeals to a younger audience. Innovation can provide journalists with more tools to do their work, give news organizations new ways to edit, distribute, and monetize their content, and allow the public to discover and respond to news that matters to them. To accomplish this, we have heard we need to collaborate and continuously sharing knowledge and insights, and it's a very good starting point and what we have heard today. Again, we have proven that we can do it. The MCB Future Week makes a difference in this. Thank you to the speakers and panelists. Thank you for you taking part in this, and have a nice day.